Hello everyone, welcome back to Despair Devlog 3/4. This devlog will be 2 weeks combined, so there's lots to cover. If you're watching this live, I'll be in the chat answering any questions related to the video. An overview of today's video. The timestamps will be in the description. Section 1, Procedural Generation. Section 2, Crafting System. Section 3, Containers. Section 4, Looting. Section 5, Item Changes. Section 6, Animation Testing. Section 7, the loot generation component, and Section 8, tweaks. Let's get going. Section 1, Procedural Generation. After starting on the procedural building last week, I decided that my next plan of action should be improving that. I initially thought that I should just spawn lots of procedural buildings with random sizes, but that turned out to have a few issues. Number 1, the building was poorly made. It used lots of calculations that only worked for one wall type and was not expandable, so that was an issue. Number 2, spawning internals would have been extremely hard. Number 3, I wanted the game to feature a more compound style level, with the ability to have buildings as an option. And finally, stairs would have been almost impossible, rendering the second layer useless. So I decided, because of all these factors, I should start with my new and insanely improved compound generator. Its ability to generate lots of different sized rooms and then connect them with corridors. It spawns walls with a proper math equation rather than just putting in values till it works, and it can make something genuinely and very coherent. Now at the moment it only supports one layer, but because of the back end I built, it can easily be expanded. Right now it only randomly spawns doors and windows, but in the coming weeks I want to add it so it spawns one door per room and windows on corners. And this level generator actually uses seeds, which means that you can actually share really great levels between your friends, kind of like how Minecraft works. Now let's move on. Section 2, Crafting and the Crafting System. Now when you open your inventory, you'll see a crafting menu appear. It will show a list of items by default, but you can quickly filter these. The most general way to do so is to use categories. The current ones are Food, Resource, Healing, and None. And this way you can go through the healing menu and figure out what you can craft. If you cannot craft an item, its crafting button will be grayed out, so you can quickly see what you can and can't craft. If you want to nail down your search to a more specific keyword or item, you can use the search bar. It's not case sensitive and just looks for the characters you entered in the string. And the back end of this system is built on the data table system, where I can define what you'll need to input and what you'll get as an output, and then it automatically fills out the rest of the data for me. Pressing the crafting button checks whether you have the items, ignoring the ones that it's already checked, and then removes them. After removing the items, it gives the output to the player. Adding this inventory system and adding lots of new functions to my inventory component, so I can quickly add new features to the whole system. Section 3, Containers. Containers made me develop a separate component that I'll talk about later to generate loot really easily. Now containers have static meshes for visuals, and all the settings are defined the same way any other inventory is, with a name, amount of slots, opening noise, and etc. After doing all the settings, I just define some things in the loot component, which I'll talk about later, and it just works. These containers have very minimal impact on performance, they don't tick, they don't do anything in the background, and they don't really add to loading times either, as loot is only generated when you first open them. Currently, I have 2 containers, the default and the locker. The locker has its own custom opening sound for testing. Section 4, Looting. Looting in Despair is highly work in progress. Currently, when you open your inventory that isn't yours, it opens without the crafting menu and just the inventory. Right-clicking an item will transfer it to your inventory. Left-clicking the item will drag it around as usual. And the system uses a few new functions I made, so that you can't add an item to your inventory unless you have space. This section's pretty short, but there isn't really anything more to it. Section 5, Item Changes. To start, there are 6 new items, mainly to begin the gameplay loop and allow me to test healing. The items are cloth, alcohol, bandages, wood planks, food ration, and ropes. If you're not into the nerdy part of game dev, skip this part, but if you're watching the premiere, suffer I suppose. Now the item backend has changed completely. It takes advantage of the data table system in Unreal. Instead of setting the item settings in the pickup, I can set the item row, and then from there change the item row settings. This means that I can access the item information from anywhere, without talking to any other actors, so that's great. Also, items now have a rarity and a type. The type, as previously discussed in the crafting section, is a way of filtering items for other systems by what it is, a resource, etc. And the rarity is the rarity of the item. This is used in loot generation, so I can set the loot rarity and generate only that specific rarity of item. Section 6, Animation Testing. When you got hit in despair previously, you would only hear an audio cue. Now there's a hit reaction. This animation overlays over any other animation. This is only to test, but essentially it's the first bit of animation I've actually added to the project. I've begun work on the first overlay, or weapon, the completely silent knife. It allows you to eliminate enemies without making sound. You'll start with this from the beginning, and will be able to quickly be equipped whenever the melee button is held. Essentially, the animations are overlaid over some other of the movement animations, which lead to it actually looking quite natural. All that needs to happen is to find a good balance for these values. The animations are all condensed into one 7-frame, very small file, with each pose lasting 1 frame, and then is sampled depending on the current movement. I created these animations in a software called Cascader. Currently, it's in free open beta, which is really cool, and I recommend that you check it out. Section 7, the Loot Generation Component. The Loot Generation Component is a really simple component that can be dropped onto any actor with an inventory and can generate loot, defined by its rarity and chance of spawning. There isn't really much to say about how it works, but it's already been added to the AI, enemies, and containers, and it's working extremely well. I plan on expanding its functionality later, but for now, it's a super easy way to generate loot. Section 8, Tweaks. A few tweaks that I've made to the game that didn't deserve to have their own sections, so I'll discuss them here. Tweak 1. FOV has been changed to 80. The reason for this change is because that's the FOV that actually felt most natural, but of course this will be adjustable in the settings. Tweak 2. The vertical slice level has been shifted to be a procedural level. Tweak 3. Added reloading sounds for the player and enemy to make it more clear in the videos, and for now, with there's no animation, you can still tell when I'm reloading. Thanks for watching today's video. In the comments, let me know whether you enjoyed the longer video every fortnight or whether you prefer weekly ones, because I'm aware of the length of this video. Now I'll end this video out with some raw gameplay. See ya.
Contact! Enemy inbound! Enemy spotted! Contact! Attack! Enemy inbound!